In the midst of a pitched battle over voting rights in which we are witnessing state-level Republicans doing everything they can to roll back access to the ballot in states that Donald Trump lost last year, one Democrat has attracted almost as much negative attention from voting rights activists as the Republicans who are making it actively harder for people to vote. The West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin infuriated voting rights advocates and his fellow Democrats earlier this month with a poorly researched op-ed explaining why he was opposing the For the People Act. He later emerged from an avalanche of deserved criticism with a compromise version of the bill that incorporated some modifications that he thought would appeal to Republicans. Now, considering Democrats hold majorities in both the House and the Senate, you might assume that it wouldn't matter that Republicans ended up rejecting that compromise anyway, but it does, thanks to the Republican habit of filibustering literally everything that happens in the Senate, forcing Democrats to come up with a 60-vote supermajority to get literally anything passed. Democrats could clear this whole issue up by simply ending the filibuster or even changing the filibuster rules. But Senator Manchin is standing in the way of that as well. As you can imagine, this is making voting rights activists very unhappy, including my next guest, the Reverend Dr. William Barber, who was arrested while protesting Senator Manchin and the filibuster earlier this week. He told the Washington Post he was willing to get arrested in the fight for voting rights because, quote, "It took this to win it. It's going to take this to keep it." Joining me now is the Reverend Dr. William Barber, the co-chairman of the Poor People's Campaign and the architect of Moral Mondays. Following the Reverend in a long tradition of civil disobedience in which, in order to get attention to and draw attention to and to get unjust things changed, you were willing to put yourself on the line, as were others who protested with you, to get the attention of the West Virginia senator. Tell me about what happened and what you think comes of it.
Well, and we're not through. Actually, we were led by West Virginians and Kentuckians that said a week ago when we marched in West Virginia that they were tired of Manchin lying on them and saying he was doing this as a senator from their state, when 79% of West Virginians want the John Lewis For the People Act, and I call it that because he actually wrote it, and the Voting Rights Act. They want it as it is, and so they marched on his office, and then they said, let's go to D.C., and I said, yeah, with them, and 17 other people, including Reverend Jackson, but Pam Morrison and Jean from West Virginia, and I could name others, saying, look, Manchin and other so-called Democrats and Republicans are supporting a non-constitutional filibuster over the constitutional guarantee that no state or government entity can deny or abridge the right to vote. And these are the same people, Ali, and this is how we connected, Brother Velshi, that are blocking living wages. We didn't start being upset with Manchin. He blocked $15 in the union. He's blocking real infrastructure. He's talking about coming up with things that everything they do, that they lessen what Joe Biden wants to do, and they end up feeding the lie of Trump. I was listening to Trump on C-SPAN last night, and the way that they are holding back the agenda of President Joe Biden is actually feeding the lie of Donald Trump, and people are tired of it. When we marched in West Virginia, 80% of the group was white because they know that this is not Jim Crow, what we're seeing. It's James Crow-esque. It's not just targeting black people, but it's targeting poor people and low-wage workers and white people and brown and indigenous and young and Asian and disabled people and older people. So if you're on the side of the Republicans who continually support a non-constitutional filibuster, then you're not on the side of the Constitution. And that's why last week was a beginning. People are calling from all over the country to recognize we need not just rallies, but a season of nonviolent civil disobedience and direct action, because that's how these the Voting Rights Act and other things were won, and that's the only way we're going to keep them and expand.
Yeah, it was a commonplace in the 60s. It was commonplace in the effort to end apartheid. You tweeted, actually, it's time for organized nonviolent direct action across the nation. It's time for Dems to go to 50+1, which means eliminating the filibuster. It's time for Manchin to answer the question asked by the miners in the 1920s. Which side are you on? There's a lot of talk about that with Manchin, with Kristen Sinema, that this, to some people, is binary. $15 an hour is binary. binary. Voting rights are binary. These are not things that there is a great deal of space for compromise on. When Republicans are attempting to take away voting rights on the basis of widespread voter fraud, that simply does not exist.
And it all connects. I mean, and think about it. Manchin is in a poor state. McConnell is in a poor state. We actually marched on McConnell and Manchin. And they have all these poor people. They block living wages. They block health care. They're watering down infrastructure, trying to keep the infrastructure from reaching to the bottom and then coming up. And think about this voting compromise that he wanted. He wants to take out the provisions that address dark money, money having more power than the people. He wants to weaken in his compromise the attorney general's ability to sue states. Look at it very closely. He wants to take out the felony reenfranchisement part of the bill. And he wants to put in a voter ID bill, which only feeds the lie and answers a problem that doesn't even exist. And he wants to feed the lie of the Republicans and of Trump that there's been some kind of fraud in our election. His compromise is not compromise, it's capitulation. And this is a moral issue. This is a constitutional issue. It's not just a black issue. All of us have to stand up because this is a battle for the fundamental principles of this democracy. Poor and low wealth folk, if they don't need anything else, they need a living wage and they need the power to vote. They need a living wage to live. They need the power to vote to stand against the powers of money that want to control this economy and control this country. And if you take those two things away from poor and low wealth people, you don't have a democracy anymore. That's why we're fighting. That's why I'm going to come back on your show and announce a season of civil disobedience. We're putting something together. I'm not talking about this morning, but this is far from over. We have to draw a line and ask that question that a white woman asked in the 1920s when the bosses tried to arrest her husband. Which side are you on, Joe Manchin? Which side are you on, Miss Sinema? Which side are you on? Are you on the people's side, the constitutional side, the moral side? Are you on the other side of unconstitutional? And since it's Sunday and I'm a preacher, are you on the side of sin?
Reverend Dr. William Barber, thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for your civil disobedience and your stand against injustice. Reverend William Barber is the co-chairman of the Poor People's Campaign.